Well, today we've been putting the engine back into Andy's Honda 504 here. So the engine's been with us since the last Manx. When did we pick it up? Was it Goodwood this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a few months, but that's mainly due to availability of parts, not anything else.
Yeah, so the engine's had a good refresh. The last time the bike did run out was at the Manx Grand Prix last year, where it was Andy's rookie year there. Did great on it. So and the testament to the motors that they and the team worked to keep the things going. It's 80% of the job is keeping your motorcycle going, especially with the vintage stuff. So yeah, it did great. Not too much wear and tear. Nevertheless, as Andy says, parts are pretty difficult to get hold of for the stock bits and pieces. So yeah, we've had a bit of a drama with that. So it's a last minute put together. The engine was literally finished yesterday, so it's fresh in the frame today.
It's not last minute. We've got a few days yet.
Oh, we have.
It's getting last minute.
Yeah,
it's getting last minute.
But we'll find out later if it's a last minute job.
Yeah.
You got two of these bikes, and what are they?
So these are both 1972 Honda 500 4-cylinder air-cooled, running CR carbs. A little bit of tuning gone on in the motors. In fact, an awful lot of tuning gone on in the motors, really. Yeah. Most of it around the head piston and conrod. Andy's motorcycle's actually got a lightened crankshaft in it, whereas mine's running a stock configuration. There's arguments for and against.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4 is basically inertia in the crank. So when you're on the longer straight, should we say, but you get at the mountain course in the Isle of Man.
I think, to be honest, I think it's accepted a crank with a bit of weight in it is an advantage. Better, just for that and for pulling up over the mountain as well. Whereas this bike revs up really quick and feels really responsive. It's I think it loses out a little bit pulling up the mountain, but we'll see. It went all right last year, but we'll see how it goes this year now.
And what are we up to right now? Because we've been working away today toward a moment.
This is it. Yeah, absolutely. This is the moment that everyone looks forward to. We're going to prime the oil system first on the dyno, so we can get the oil around it. Make sure we've got oil flow around the oil cooler and everything else. We don't have any cavitation. Check the oil level. Plugs in. Spark her up. Then we've got some heat cycles to get through it, which is the most important thing. So, it's not just straight in it and run it up for power. We're going to get sort of 3 heat cycles through it, just to make sure that the engine is bedded in the best it can be, really, before we go racing. But we will do a power check by the end of the day, just to prove that mine's a lot more powerful than Andy's.
Yeah, but then it'll come down to talent, Aaron, then, won't it? But that's a topic for another day. But I think it's imperative. Aaron touched on getting these heat cycles. It's imperative that we get these heat cycles on these bikes. It's important on a road bike, but in particular on a race bike. Bear in mind, we go Tuesday, Wednesday next week to the Isle of Man, and we start practice next Sunday. It's incredibly hard on any bike, let alone a classic bike. So we need to give it the best chance we can that it survives that first week, let alone to get to the race day the following Saturday. So, yeah, this time spent now on the dyno is critical, really. I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
to make sure it beds in properly. Otherwise, all the time and effort and money that we spent on rebuilding the engine will be partly wasted, really. So we need to make best use of that.
So, Aaron, this is actually what your business does, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're predominantly a performance centre. The company has been in existence for 33 years now. Started off with a guy called Steve Smith, who's incredible engine builder. He built this engine here that we're looking at. Obviously, he built my engine, and there's an incredible lineage behind that. And with regards to failures and performance, no failures, top performance. We've got a hell of a following because of the reliability. Some people do it cheaper, but
I like that you work on the bikes as well, Andy. You don't just ride it.
No, I know. Yeah, I think it's. To be honest, I think it helps as well riding classic stuff that you've got an understanding of how the bike works, because it's one thing riding it, it's another thing getting it to last the duration. So a little bit of mechanical sympathy or understanding helps.
It's got to go on at this stage, boys, before we get started.
So we just need to move this gear linkage in a little bit, because it's going to foul on. It'll foul on your boot, but it'll foul on Aaron's boot now, but it'll also foul on your race boot. So the problem you sometimes get with gear shifts on this sort of vintage bike is that if you put any pressure on this linkage here with your foot, if when you're racing us on, it'll stop the selector coming back to its center position. So then you won't be able to select the next gear. So it's just clearance really. That just needs moving in slightly.
Yep.
But we might as well do it now before we get. More we do now, less have to do when we get to the Isle of Man.
So today we are just going to run it on super unleaded just for the purposes of this, but when we come to actually fueling the bike, if we need to fuel it, then it will be super unleaded supplemented with Tetra Boost. Well, this is the oxygen sensor, so like with any modern car, to check the emission standards, we put this little probe down here and it's checking the fuel air mix within the burnt gases.
Is this so I can ride it into central London without having to
That's
pay?
right, yeah. So you won't be charged an LEZ charge.
Yeah, which is great. Always thinking.
I mean, at the end of the day, everyone should be riding classic vehicles because they're exempt. So classic vehicles are going to come back more valuable again, as far as I'm concerned.
Tinnitus? Either you guys got it?
Pardon? What's that whining?
That was so predictable, and I'm embarrassed. No, not too bad really. Yeah, no. I mean, I suffer a little bit after after racing. For a couple of days, depending on what we ride. This bike isn't too bad actually, but I ride some other bikes. I ride some MV Augustas, which are just deafening, even with plugs in. So if I ride those on race them on a weekend, it's normally Wednesday before I can hear my wife again. Well, maybe Friday.
Right.
So go on.
No, you go ahead.
Sorry, Aaron. Don't let the middle of my sentence interrupt the start of yours. So what we're going to do here before we start the bike up is we've taken the spark plugs out, so it's definitely not going to run. We'll turn it over on the dyno in gear and just prime the oil system. And we'll do that to make sure there's oil feed up to the cams and the rockers, which is important when an engine's been either stood or been rebuilt. So that's the first process we'll do now. Let's spark the midget jam out.
Is there any nerves at all?
No.
Not really?
No.
Another day at the office, I suppose.
Yeah, it's all a process. It's all a process. Right, so I've got oil in it. I've got a spanner to crack off the oil pipe on the radiator, so we can check oil flow up to there.
Yeah.
So we're ready to rock and roll. Do you want to do the bleeding and I'll do the
Yeah, I'm just going to get these
spinning?
Well, I've started.
You ready?
Mm-hmm. Cool. Level all right? We do more, put plugs in, or what do you want to do?
I think that'd be okay.
You're only not going to do a lot on it now, are we?
No. And the oil level's quite good actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
You're worried about dirt in those plug holes, Andy?
Well, it's all been clean, so I mean, the only thing I'd say is it's a good point, but if the bike's been run or raced or whatever, you just got to be careful that there's no gravel around the plug itself and the aperture there, because if you take the plug out sometimes, as you take the plug out, it falls into the bore, which is not what you want. So, but this is a brand new engine, fresh out of their engine shop, which is a pretty clean environment. So there's no issues here. But yeah, if the bike had been raced or been out on the road or whatever, then yeah, it's important just to check that.
Yeah.
And you were saying before about not having an air filter on because it saps power.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. I mean, the small displacement engine's only 500 cc, so you want it to breathe in and out as efficiently as you can. So, yeah, we run them without filters. I mean, some guys do race with a filter, but it does sap a little bit of power. So we just accept that it's not gonna last as long as it should do. It's a race bike at the end of the day, and we tear them down and rebuild them anyway. So. It's not ideal, but it is for optimum performance.
How many races will we get out of that engine?
Next week we'll probably get Realistically, I mean, when you think about it, we're going to Isle of Man, so you got. Is it 5 nights of practice? Come on, it is 5 nights of practice and then one race, which doesn't sound a lot. Some nights they do one. You get one lap in because of timings and stuff like that, and delays and so on.
Somewhere between sort of 10 and 14 laps, times that by 37 3/4 miles.
It's a lot of miles. Yeah. It's a hell of a lot of miles on a bike. So even one lap, 37 3/4 miles flat out, which it is around there on a little bike like this, is hard on a bike. So it's a lot of miles. When you bear in mind what an average race bike does for the season, people ride short circuit and ride wherever brands of Donington, whatever, they'll do. What would they do in a year?
Probably a couple of thousand.
No, not even that, will they?
Well,
not even that. I mean, you do more miles
days and track days and
well,
such.
I suppose so. You do more miles in that week for one race at the TT, whether it be TT or the Manx, than most people do in a season.
So we put our run configurations into the dyno software, so we know what motorcycle it is, who it is, year, make, model, the configuration of the bike. So if we ever want to look at future data for comparison, or if customer wants their dyno sheets again because they've lost them, then we can find that data, but we don't keep full name data or anything like that for data protection reasons.
So at the end of today, we'll know the power of this bike, won't we?
We will, yeah. Just have to make sure the floats aren't stuck in the carbs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good start, isn't it? Hang on, that's alright, there's a bit of condensation on the exhaust, that's alright. Well, that's a good start. Well, at least it runs. This is in Aaron's secret drawer in his toolbox. One's got to ask the question.
What are you up to, mate?
I'm just setting the idle screws to one complete rotation, which was actually where they were set. The only reason I do that is because it's where I set mine to the other day, so I know it's a relatively good setting. However, I mean, that's on the idle circuit, so they should all technically be the same because they're the same carburetors and you're running on the idle circuit. The jetting's all the same. It's not until you start going onto the main jet that things are different between motorcycles. Certainly on between R2, we think we're running 105s in this.
Jets mains. I think we put that back on 105s. Yeah, it needs to go up.
Yeah,
but for
so
today it's fine.
Here.
Yeah.
So yeah, 105, and then you've got your needle clip position, which determines the amount of fuel that is introduced as you open the throttle.
Sound, Danny?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Just how I remember it, which is quite reassuring, isn't it? It's I mean, it's a year. Actually, I have ridden it. I rode it after the Manx. Actually, I rode it at Croft.
Oh, okay.
After the Manx last year, when it was pretty worn out, and it went well. But yeah, this bike sounds very different to Aaron's. I don't know if you've heard Aaron's bike. Most of these 504s are on open megaphones, so like really, really loud. Sound fantastic. We've got a 4-into 2-into-1 exhaust system on this with a single megaphone, just to try and get rid of some of the
undesirable effects and megas.
Yeah, you get this thing called megaphone-itis, which is a bit of a hole in the power. So this should get rid of it, but it does sound very different. It doesn't sound like a typical 504, but it sounds great. When it's on full chat, it rips. It's really it sounds great.
Megaphone-itis. Where's the flat spot?
You sort of get you got a flat spot mid-range on yours.
Mine doesn't really like to be below 7,000 RPM, so you need to be in the correct gear that when you're in a particular position, rolling on, you've got to be above 7,000 before you start cracking the throttle. So, which is easy to do once you're on a roll. However, off the line, oh my God, it's you know, well, half the time,
Yeah.
we no matter where you qualify, you go, can we go to the back of the grid, please, and just have a good race, because it's a pretty scary place to be if you can't get
Yeah,
off
I
the
think that's
line.
partly those exhausts, but I think partly it's also mine was terrible because of the lightweight crank as well. So the crank's so light in this, I don't think there's any inertia, so it meant when the clutch engaged, it was just like a switch. So it was really difficult. So you had to really rev it, and then ride like a two-stroke off the line by slipping the clutch. And the problem with that is the clutches don't last. So you're trying to launch it, you're trying to look after it. So it's not so bad. It's not so bad in the Isle of Man because you only start once. You've only got one start, you know. But if you go, you know, ride a short circuit where you've got a race start with a big grid, you know, it's a little bit disconcerting. It's not great. So, but as Aaron says, you know, you should be able to, once you've got off the line, it's easy at the Isle of Man. Once you've gone, you've gone. But and there's only Ramsey hairpin maybe where you're really down on the revs. Might have to slip the clutch just to get it back on song again, just to get through that flat spot. But I mean, it'll be fine, and you'll be able to stand in Douglas and hear him for most of the lap with his exhaust. You know exactly where he is.
Around the sump.
What's that fucking thing in
Everything going as planned?
Yeah, we've got a little oil leak, which is an oil leak we've struggled with before actually. It runs a deep sump and it's got like a baffle plate to increase the capacity in the sump. There's two O-rings, one on the top, one on the bottom, and sometimes they move, so I think that's what's happened again. We had it before, didn't we? We had it last year.
So Manx last year.
But we might just persevere with it for now, just to get it through another heat cycle, and then because just to sort that out, it's the exhaust and everything off again to get to it. So it's not a 2-minute job, but
while the engine's cooling down, it's something we can be getting on with, so it's no lost time.
the gear change is fine now.
Bez, you're happy with that, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's normal. It's not smooth, is it? The bike though. It's
no,
a bit.
there's I can see a lot of oil around this flange here when it's running. Let me clean it down with brake fluid, brake cleaner. We'll give it a good clean because it could just be being thrown up from there, but I don't think it is. I think it's the oil pump. So we could either have 2 leaks or 1 leak which is causing all of this.
What happened, Aaron?
Just a couple of O-rings that we had to reuse because we couldn't get the original equipment. They're a bit too flat basically, and they've not done the job, so we had to break into the trusty general spares to do the job. But these will be fine, they're in a captive area. They've got a good temperature range, these things, so it will be okay.
How much do you use well seal?
How much is well seal?
How much do you use it?
On British motorcycles, a lot.
Sponsored by it.
Yeah,
Sponsored by it.
yeah, because British motorcycles like generally don't have any gaskets in them.
Yeah.
So I well seal pretty much everything, and it's good stuff. It's all about the application, though. You know, get a nice smear, even smear across both surfaces. Let it go tack dry, and then assemble. So for a running in process, we tend to do 3 20-minute cycles, taking it up 4,000 RPM at a time. So you start going up to no greater than 4,000 RPM. Let it cool back down to room temperature in a normal fashion. So let it normalise. Don't let it, don't shock cool it. Put it that way. And then we'll run again, get her up to temperature, and then we'll be raising our RPMs up to 8,000 for 20 minutes. Going up and down the box, you know, you don't just want to sit there static because you'll glaze it. So you need to be going up and down the box, up and down the rev range, but no greater than 8,000 RPM. And then for the last one, you know, we'll go up to 12,000, which for most motorcycles is near the business end anyhow, certainly is on these things. And then that's it, that's our running in process. Takes about an hour basically, but of course you've got the cooling down cycles in between, so it's not just an hour.
So, where are we at now?
So we've done stage 2 of the running in. We've upped the rev range so we can get a higher rev on the bike. Make sure we're gradually building up on these revs so that we're not glazing the barrels or anything like this. Got a few little issuettes with minor oil leaks, but you know, this is the whole purpose of the dyno running, but nothing that's going to be a showstopper for us.
Yeah, it's all good. So plan now is another heat cycle. Let it cool down, and then we'll finish off with a power run. So we'll get a little video of the power run later on, and you guys should see it a little bit later on today.